So welcome to Creative Mornings number 2. So we're back again after a successful first edition. Today's topic, so for those who's not come to Creative Mornings before, every month is a new topic. That new topic is released on the first of every month. This topic is Wonder. It's been designed by a chap called Rune Fisker from Copenhagen chapter of Creative Mornings, because we're in a global organisation now, which is very special indeed. So Creative Mornings, like I say, is a global chapter. So we're a breakfast lecture series for the creative industry. We've got a little mantra. I don't know if you all can read it. It's quite small type, so I'll whack through it for you. So everyone is creative. A creative life requires bravery, action, honesty and hard work. We are here to support and celebrate you and encourage you to make the things you love. We believe in the power of community. We believe in giving a damn. Sorry, I like that bit. We believe in face-to-face connections, in learning from each other, and hugs and high fives, which we've had a woo! High five, everybody. We bring together people who are driven by passion and purpose, that are confident, and we will inspire each other to change neighbourhoods and cities around the world. Everyone is creative and everyone is welcome. But we can't do that without our global partners. Our global partners sponsor every chapter around the world. We've got about 260 chapters around the world currently. MailChimp is the first one. WordPress.com also sponsor us and make our lovely websites. Adobe help us be creative and design lovely things to look at. We've also got Hannah and Charlene. Stick your hands up, Hannah and Charlene. Mainframe, who are the founders of the creative community in Derby. They're the ones who let us do this sort of thing. We've got Future-Proof Films, who in case you can't guess, are the video guys. Everybody wave, Future-Proof Films. We've got Essential Print Services, Yvonne Gorman, sitting on her own. Our little local sponsors who help us put all this lovely stuff together. We've also got Steve, who runs the Quad Cafe, who's not here technically, but he lends us the room and the lovely food and the coffee and stuff, so big applause for Steve. We've got Chantal, who's coming specially early on the front desk, our duty manager. Chantal? Thank you very much. Which brings us to the main event. The reason you've all come today, to hear this man, Amir, speak on the topic of wonder. So a bit of a personal introduction to me. He's a guy I've known for a few years now, right? Several years now. And he's a smart guy all around. He's a Seth Godin, old MBA alumni. If you don't know what that is, Google it. You will be suitably impressed. He runs a video marketing agency and he's just a good guy. So I'm going to shut up and hand over to my friend Amir. Go on, mate.
So this talk is inspired by the theme of wonder and my interpretation of it in relation to a specific topic. And it's a topic that I've wondered about more than probably any other topic over the last 12 months or so. It's a topic that I've journaled about countless times, wondered about deeply, and even been interviewed on podcasts about. It's a topic that binds everyone in this room, that we're all going to have to face someday, and that no one can escape from. The psychologist Irvin D. Yalom wrote an amazing book on this topic called Staring at the Sun. And he called it Staring at the Sun because he said that we can't stare at the sun for any meaningful amount of time without feeling a lot of pain. Just as we can't think about this topic that I'm about to speak about for any meaningful amount of time without experiencing a lot of pain. And of course, that topic is our own death. And the story that I want to share with you today starts about a year ago, almost the day actually, when I was in the supermarket doing some shopping with my girlfriend. And all of a sudden, I have an excruciating pain in my chest. Fighting to breathe. The pain shoots all the way down my left arm, all the way through the left-hand side of my face. And it's a pain that literally brought me to my knees. Later that day, I found myself in a local hospital, hooked up to all kinds of heart monitors. There are wires everywhere. And after all the tests are done and the results are back, the doctor sits me down and says, "You were very lucky. On this occasion, it wasn't a heart attack. But it's a warning that something in the future might happen. It's a warning sign." So that episode really got me wondering about my own death, about how did I feel about it. I figured it was a pretty important thing to wonder about. So that's what I did. I wondered about it deeply, wrote about it, and the conclusion that I came to was, I didn't like it. I didn't like the fact that I was going to die one day and not be able to see my kids, not be able to spend time with the people that I love, doing things that I love doing. I quite like living. So coming face to face with that inescapable truth that one day I'd stop existing was deeply troubling to me. So I realized then that unless I could find peace with that and feel okay with my own death, that it would negatively impact me down the line. I didn't want to succumb to death anxiety. The psychologists Florian and Mikulinsa said that the paralyzing terror that's produced by the awareness of one's own mortality leads to the denial of death awareness and the repression of death-related thoughts. So, in other words, when we're faced with thoughts of our own death, we tend to avoid it like the plague on every level and pretend that it's not going to happen. But the thing is, that can lead to death anxiety. Death anxiety is the fear of our own death, and it can permeate our lives in some really negative ways. So it can lead to depression. It can make us lose sense of purpose and meaning in life. It can make us cynical. And it can make us lose interest in things that we're actually very passionate about. So death anxiety can quite literally strangle the life from our life. So therefore, the relationship that we have with our own death has a direct impact on the quality of the time that we have left. So if we succumb to death anxiety, that's like the ultimate waste. So what can we do about that? Well, like I said, I've wondered about this a lot. And one of the things that has helped me is realizing that we're part of a much larger process that's been going on for billions of years. We're a very small part of that. But our death is a natural part of that. Evolution has only happened because things die. So life exists because of death. Just in the same way that we can only experience light because of darkness. If we were immortal, we'd lose all sense of meaning and purpose in life because there'd never be any impetus for us to do anything, ever. So it's the scarcity of our life that gives it intrinsic value. It allows us to create meaning. And that can only happen if we die. So our death enables us to find a deep purpose. But we do need to be comfortable with it. And that's not just so that when we do die, when we're facing death, that we can deal with it in good grace. It's so that we can, as I've suggested, make the most of the time that we have left, which is obviously our most scarce resource. So what can we do about that fear of death? Well, the answer doesn't lie in beating fear. We can't beat fear. Fear is our most natural, basic response. And actually, when you look at the purpose of why we feel fear, it's to keep us alive. Fear's like an overprotective big brother who's just not very bright. So every time the old brain perceives a threat, that's when we feel it. It's saying, stop, wait, don't do that, don't think about that. And that's why we repress certain thoughts and why we avoid taking certain action that could actually be good for us down the line. but just because there's a perception that it might hurt us now. So we can't beat fear, we can't resist or fight fear because that will just create more anxiety. So what can we do? Well, I think the crux of the answer lies in a lesson we can learn from one of my favorite stories by a Greek storyteller called Aesop. And that story is called The Wind and the Sun, and I'm going to quickly tell it to you now. It goes like this. The wind and the sun are one day disputing as to who is the strongest. So they decide to have a competition. And there's a traveller walking through the hills. And they agree that whoever can get the traveller to remove his coat first is strongest. So the wind goes first. And the wind blows and blows and blows. And the more ferociously the wind blows, the tighter the traveller holds his coat around him. Eventually, the wind becomes exasperated and gives up. So now it's the sun's go. And the sun emerges from behind a cloud and simply radiates its glorious light and warmth down onto the traveller. And the sun just gets warmer and warmer and warmer until eventually, of his own accord, the traveller removes his coat himself. So the moral that we can take from that, the lesson we can take from that is when we're trying to create change, like we're trying to create change with our relationship to our death, if we're trying to influence or persuade, let's try and be like the sun. Let's use our warmth. But how do we relate that back to our context? How do we apply warmth and love even to our own death? How do we melt away that death anxiety? Well, from the wanderings I've had over the last year, I think it's to do the following. I think it's to turn our death into a great act of giving. And I'm not talking about wills and inheritance. That stuff's obviously very important. But I'm talking about something that's more valuable than that. And that's what the rest of this talks about. So there's a cornerstone to turn your death into a great act of giving. And that's to embrace that it's easier to leave than it is to be left. So what does that mean? Well, let's take an example. Let's say that we're ending a relationship. Let's say that we're the ones that are choosing to end that relationship. Because we're taking that action, we've got a certain level of understanding and acceptance of that situation. We're moving on, maybe physically moving on to another place, maybe even a different person. But the person that we've left behind, we've left a hole in their life. Maybe they were caught off guard, unaware. Maybe they're going to be confused. Maybe they're going to have questions. So while it's going to be hard for us, it's going to be harder for them because they don't have that same level of understanding and acceptance over that situation. So relating that back to our situation, the way that we can understand that it's easier to leave than it is to be left is that when we're facing our own death, we're the ones wondering about it, dealing with it. Sure, it's going to be difficult. But we're going to be leaving people behind, and their suffering is going to continue. And no matter what you believe about the afterlife, what your position on that is, our suffering in this form stops, and theirs continues. They're going to be hurting, missing us, in mourning, and healing their broken hearts. And they might be hurting for a while because maybe we were important to them. Maybe they looked up to us and admired us. Maybe we were their rock. Maybe they needed us. So the way that we turn our death into a great act of giving, by embracing that it's easy to leave than it is to be left, is to live in a way that we're making sure that the people around us that mean the most to us have everything that they need to thrive long after we're gone. And I'm talking about your insights, your wisdom, your perspective. Those things that make you you, that literally nobody else can give because they make you who you are. That's what it means to turn your death into a great act of giving. And this isn't exclusive between parents and children. It can relate to friends, groups, communities that you're involved in, even business. I mean, your customers, are you giving them everything that they need? Are you fulfilling all of your promises to them? So the question we need to ask is, are we living in a way that we're giving these things? Are we mindful of that? I believe that there's another reason to embrace this. I think that there's something of an archetypal ideal death where we're on our deathbed and we've got everyone around us that we love, so we can tell them one last time that we love them and just give that last bit of wisdom, that nugget of wisdom to them to help them on their way before we go, and just leave no ambiguity whatsoever about what they meant to us and the role they played in our lives. But reality is very different from that. And whether you believe in fate or destiny or chaos, we could go at any time. So we're unlikely to be afforded that luxury. So the antidote to that is to live in a way now that when we go, whenever it happens, the people that mean most to us already know all of those things. They already have all of that wisdom. They already know what they meant to us and the roles that they played in our life. And one way to do that is to turn your death into a great act of giving. Because turning your death into a great act of giving is to be generous and vulnerable. We're flipping the frame around and we're taking the focus off ourselves and we're shining that light onto the people that mean most to us. We're choosing to lead our lives with compassion and empathy and with courage. Compassion because we've made our death about giving. Empathy because we're considering how they might be feeling, how they might be hurting, what they might need. And courage because, well, the definition of courage is to take the right action in the face of fear. And I don't think that we need to wait to do this. I don't think we need to wait until we're on our deathbed or we've got a terminal illness or we know that we're going to die. Because to turn your death into a great act of giving, it's to nourish yourself now. It's to nourish your relationships now. It's to nourish the outlook that you've got on the rest of your life now. It's choosing to be the sun. So why would you wait for all of that when it's something you can start doing today? Turning your death into a great act of giving is like the overarching strategy, and the nuts and bolts of it are very much up to you. Your own personal situation, your relationships, for you to discover and implement yourselves. And I very much hope that you do, because those unique things that make you who you are, that nobody else can give, they're needed. Your insights and wisdom's needed. You're needed. So let's bring our best selves to our lives day in, day out. Let's be the sun and focus on giving. Because we need to tell our stories now, because that's what's going to live on in other people after we go. And finally, just remember that by committing to a good death, you're committing to a good life. Because dying well means that you've lived well. Thank you.
After your episode that you had, a near heart attack, so how did that impact on your business after that, your thought process after that?
Yeah, it's a good question. I actually took about a month off and just didn't do anything. And I actually decided that I needed to work with more generosity and vulnerability from then. And that, I run a video marketing agency. So the way that translated was just making sure that I was giving everything possible to clients on a deeper level and being super, super honest, but making sure that I was working with the right people as well. Yeah.
Made me think of Simone de Beauvoir.
Okay.
She wrote a book called All Men Are Mortal. And it's exactly like you were saying that, spoiler alert, there is a character in the book who's immortal, and then everyone around him dies. So this idea of immortality being a blessing is actually not, it's a curse. But also it's an inherently political book because it's about the fact that actually we don't learn and all the mistakes of history get repeated and repeated and repeated. And so I think that's, from what you're saying, how do we pass on that wisdom? How do we make sure that those mistakes don't just keep getting passed on?
Is that a question?
Yes.
Yeah, right. Well, it's an interesting one. I mean, I'm a father. I've got 2 boys and two stepsons, so we've got 4 boys altogether. And I've thought about it a lot. Like, you know, I've made mistakes in my life, and how can I help my boys avoid those errors? And I can try and talk about them, examples of better ways I could have dealt with things for sure, but it doesn't mean that they're not going to make those same errors. They're going to make their own errors as well. So I think it's more about teaching them how to deal with life when they make mistakes, and how to be humble and resilient. So they've got a tool set, I suppose, to deal with whatever they're going to make, the mistakes they're going to make.
Has your episode, has it made you have a different view of who you were as a person? Has it made the reflection on your life? Has you come to any realizations about how you could change the way you were, or maybe the things that reflecting back you're not as happy with as you would be now? Yeah.
So I think it affected me on several levels. The first one was health and fitness, because I was out of shape then. So I've not taken that for granted. And then, sure, yeah, you look at life as, we don't know how long we've got left, right? But it's a finite amount of time. So I do start looking at the time that I've got left as actually something that's very, very precious, when perhaps I just wasn't mindful of it. I mean, death is such an abstract thing, right? So it's hard for us to actually engage with it in a meaningful level unless we come face to face with it, either by being poorly or someone very close to us, maybe dying or passing away or suffering. So yeah, I think it affected me on several levels. But I'd say I'm more mindful that I've only got so much time left. So my decision making, it's about stuff that I really care about. So I don't do stuff that I'm not that bothered about doing. I've got to really want to do it.
So it's given you a lot more focus, would you say, then?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So, Amir, big round of applause for Amir. So that brings us to the end of the wordy bit of Creative Mornings number 2. So it's down to me to thank, again, the ladies of Mainframe, Charlene and Hannah. Big round of applause. Big round of applause for Chantal and for Steve, who's not here again, but runs the cafe. Future Proof Films, the video guys. Amir for speaking.
Yeah.
For being one of our local sponsors today from